Hello, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So lots of great stuff to talk about today, as always, but I always start out with the stats and looking at what's going on. And basically, the number of single-family homes last week was 378. It was 425 the week before. Now, that was the end of the month. Well, it wasn't the end of the month, but it was kind of a carryover from the end of the month because the end of the month was on a Friday, and that always makes it so that they're kind of messed up when it comes to putting stuff on there a little bit. The median price of a single family home is at $422,500, which it was a little bit higher. I think it was $430 last week. So we're still in that same range. So that's all good. The inventory went up by 198, which takes us to 8335. So when we're looking at those 378 properties and how they shake down, there were 39 of them under 250. 30 of them between 250 and 300, 105 between 3 and 400, 69 between 4 and 500, 106 between 500 and a million, and then 31 over a million. Now, the inventory based on this week's sales is at 5.09, which is still considered a normal market. So normal market is between 4 and 6. So we're pretty much at a normal market everywhere across the board. 500 to a million, we're at 6.41, and over a million, we're at 6.55. So in all of those other price points, we're basically in the 3-month period, except for the 400 to 500, we're at 5.76. So, everything basically 400 and below, we're in a buyer's market, which basically there isn't that much inventory out there. But once you get into those higher price points, then they're moving slower. So like I always say, that when we're looking at it, it's very local. So you need to look and see what's going on with that. The list to ask price ratio overall is at 97.19. We're at 98. Basically between 300 and a million, and then over a million is at 96.51, which that's always lower, and then under 250 is at 91.98, and we're at 96.37, 250 to 300. Now, the lower end and the higher end are always lower than kind of the middle, and that's usually because A, they need work, or B, those people that are buying on the high end, the high end, basically have more things that they want to do and all of that kind of good stuff. And so there's more wiggle room when you come to that. Basically, the average days to a contract is sitting at 79 overall. And basically the days to closing is 116. So when you're looking at that, basically we're about 40 days from contract to closing overall. It's 38. So it had it right there for me. It was all figured out. So when we're looking at the condos, townhomes, and villas, last week there were 103. It was 112 the week before that. And the median price was at 285. It was pretty close to 300 last week, so that's down a little bit, but somewhere between 250 and 300 is where it's kind of ranging week to week. The inventory did increase as well there, but only by 56. And so when we're looking at that, though, the condos, townhomes, and villas generally has a much higher inventory than the single-family homes do. Basically, they're at 9.83 overall, and so that's quite a bit bigger than the 5 months of inventory for the single family homes. So almost 10 months of inventory on the condos, townhomes, and villas. So I was meeting with the condo owner earlier this week, and I've just told them that, hey, we've got to be pretty aggressive when it comes to it. And we are looking at what was going on locally, for that subdivision and that condo complex. In that complex, there had been 5 that had sold in the last 6 months, and there were 4 on the market. So when you're looking at that, that's not really as bad as some of the other ones at 10, so obviously if 1 a month sells, which is basically what was happening, and there's 5 on the market, then there's 5 months worth of inventory. So when you're looking at that, that's kind of like how it shakes down. So that was kind of like the single family homes in that particular complex. But like I said, there was another condo that I recently sold, and 1 a month is selling in that complex as well, but there were 17 on the market. So you can see that it's a big difference in regards to what's going on. So with the condos, townhomes, and villas, in my opinion, you've got to be really cognizant in regards to what's going on and what's happening, and then you're going to find how things are going that are going to make things better. But basically, when we're looking at those 103 condos, townhomes, and villas, there were 35 of them under 250. 24 between 250 and 300, 26 between 300 and 400, 9 between 400 and 500, 9 between 500 and a million, and none of them sold over a million. So, like I said, 9.83 months of inventory overall. There are 11.34 under 250. And then we go to 6.42, and then we're in the 9s, 14s, and over a million. There's 17 properties, but none of them sold last week. So they also are 78 days to contract, the ones that sold, and they are at 96.79 list to ask price ratio, which is actually pretty close to the single family home, which was at 97.19. So not too much different when it comes to that when you're looking at it. But the reason that I go through and say how many are in each price range is because I think that it's really important that you know that in whatever price range you are, that it is possible. Now, it might not be in the exact area that you're looking for, it might not be the exact house that you're looking for, but there are options and everything out there for people to get their foot in the door and everything like that. And I think that the biggest thing probably is when it comes to affordability is that it's not that people can't afford to buy their first home, but I think that they maybe can't buy the kind of home that they could have bought a few years ago, or maybe not in the area that they could have bought a few years ago. And so that's where it gets down. And there is a combination of things, after the pandemic, there was a little bump in regards to the number of properties that sold. And then the increase in the interest rate is basically what was the thing that caused the most, affordability issues that came into play. So if the interest rate went from 3% to 6%, that was a huge increase in the amount of the payment, that it was going to be, maybe I'd have to look it up and see on a $100,000 house what the difference is. Not that there are any $100,000 houses out there, but I think that it came from being, like a $300 payment to a $600 payment or something like that. So it's quite significant in regards to what the difference is. And so you have to operate optimally within the market and find what works for you and what's going to be your best situation when it comes down to it. Now, a bit of good news for Florida out there that also comes under the stat kind of statistic is that the Florida's economy has already added 430,800 jobs in early 2025. And that the state's private sector job growth outpaced the national rate is what the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics said. And so that is through February. And Florida's job market hits 11.1 million workers. And so our labor force has been consistently larger than previously estimated, with an upward revision of 162,000 workers. And we added 113,600 jobs year over year in January of 2025. So since May of 2020, employers across the state have expanded their workforce in 54 of the past 57 months, and Florida's private sector job growth at the rate of 1.3% outpaced the national average of 1.2 during the same period. So I think that just shows what's good for Florida's economy. We've got people coming into the state. There are obviously jobs. And so all of that adds to a stable environment, stable housing, and sellers can sell when they want to, buyers can buy when they want to, which makes all of us happy. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and I'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I always think it's interesting, working with people out there. I definitely like to do that, obviously, working with people and getting to know people and what they're trying to do and all of that kind of good stuff is really one of the best things of my job. We definitely want to make sure that we're doing the best thing that we can in order to to handle what we can to make sure that people get what they need and all of that kind of good stuff, which is what we do. So basically, when you're working with people, it's always interesting to talk to them to find out what they want to do, what their goals are, and all of that kind of thing. If it's a first-time buyer, maybe there's some more educating, but a lot of people that I work with, it seems like, come from another area. And as a result of that, then that's something else that we're working with and that kind of thing as well. So, basically it's getting to know them, getting to know their family, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and all of that kind of stuff. I was meeting with a family last week, and they were in town, and they come to town about every other month at worst case scenario, and so they were just looking at getting a vacation home. And so they thought but they're not really looking to rent it out. They're looking for a place for themselves. And so, and it's usually multi-generations that are coming in and a lot of times getting these homes. And so it was the perfect situation. Now they are looking at potentially renting it out in the summer because they do like to come, in the winter, and they like to go on a lot of cruises and all of that kind of thing. But it works out for them because what they're going to be doing is they're going to have a place that they can come and go when the weather is cold up north. They live in Michigan, I believe. And so when the weather is cold, they're going to be down here off and on. And then when, in the summer, they don't want to be here. And so they're renting their place out. So it's always interesting to figure out, what's most important to people in what they're doing. And I think that if you're considering buying or selling, that probably is one of the most important questions that you need to ask yourself is, what am I trying to accomplish here? What is most important to me? A lot of people, when I talk to them and they say, and I'm like, what are the most must-haves? And a lot of times they're saying that they want a fenced-in backyard. And the reason for that is because they have pets and they want to be able to, kind of put them outside and forget about it a little bit and know that they're protected and that they don't have to worry about them wandering off or anything like that. And they don't have to worry about somebody else coming in. But then I asked the question, is it really important that you have a fenced in backyard right now, or is it important that you can do it? And most of the time it's that they want to just know that they can do it and not that it has to be there. If it's there right now, it's a bonus, but it's not a requirement when they're going to purchase the home. And so when it comes down to it, and I've said it before, but when you're meeting with families and we're asking those questions together, they've all kind of talked about purchasing a home, but they haven't necessarily talked about the must-haves or what they really want. Is it that they want a downstairs primary bedroom and bathroom? Is it that they want to have the pool, or they don't want to have the pool, or they want to have the open floor plan, or they don't? And so it's really interesting meeting with people because they're discovering those things when they're talking to each other at that point too, because they've talked about kind of the surfacey things, but haven't gotten down deep in regards to what they're looking for. And basically, that's what I find is extremely important when it comes to purchasing a home, is the real down and deep details and figuring out what really is important for you and your family. And so that's what I try to start out with doing, is figuring out, what people want. And then when you know what they want, then you can obviously, solve the problem and do it quicker. And so I find that sitting down and figuring that out, whether it's a buyer or a seller, that we can sit down and, figure out, like what they want to do or where they're going. I was meeting with another couple this week, and they actually own a condo right now that is on the third floor. They live in Virginia, and they're looking at that, they want to have another place that they're ready to sell this place. They come down, again, not every for months at a time, but they come for a couple of months at a time. They've got their closet with all their clothes in it, so they don't have to bring things off and on. They just come and, set it and forget it, kind of thing. But it is on the third floor, and they're in their 70s, and so they're thinking, we don't really want the stairs don't bother them going up, because the stairs going up to this unit are actually, I think they're like 6-inch stairs, and it's amazing, the 6-inch versus the 12-inch stairs. And I know they're not all 12-inch, but when they're a little bit smaller, that you can go up them faster, and it doesn't feel like such a big incline. And but they said that it's the carrying the things up there that is getting to them, the groceries and all of the constant things that you're always carrying up and down and that kind of thing. And so when it comes down to it, you really want to look at what is the best thing for you, for your family, when it comes to that particular property. And they were just deciding, they still want to come here. So do they want to buy something else, or are they just they're also Disney Vacation Club members, so are they just going to come and stay on property and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of decisions that come into play when people are buying or selling, and figuring out, what's the best possible solution for them. And as I said, it's like a puzzle, and I like to put it together to make sure that everything, comes together. But one thing that came out this week that I saw an article on manufactured stone, and it gains popularity and value on your home. So that is the faux stone that's making a comeback as the quality improves. The average project cost is under $12,000 to put stone on the front of your house, and it looks really nice the way that they're doing it. It looks like real stone, and it has 153% ROI. So that's a return on investment. So you don't find a lot of things that you do to your home that give you that kind of return on investment, but manufactured stone definitely does that. Now, I have sold a couple of homes that they put that manufactured stone on the inside on a couple walls and underneath the counter, and that was the first thing that the new owner removed. So it's not necessarily something for everybody, but there are different ways that you can do it, especially on the outside, that they do it, that it does look beautiful. It does distinguish the house, from other properties and that kind of thing. And the curb appeal on it is pretty great. So you want to look and make sure that, when you're doing projects, that it's something that's going to add value to the property and add value to what you're doing, in order to make sure that it's a long-term play and going to do everything that you're expecting it to. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we will see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you could call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I wanted to talk today about some hints for sellers when it goes to sell your home. And one of the things is the paint. And so they've come up with what they consider the best living room and bedroom colors for a home sale. Home stagers and designers, they're advising a softer color palette in 2025 to make a home more sellable. Now, one of the things that I was going to talk about it last week, and I don't think I got to it, that was talking really about when houses that are selling that are in good shape versus that need a little bit of work. And basically the bottom line is that people are looking for houses that don't need work. I mean, there are the flippers out there that are definitely looking for houses that need work to make them so that they don't need work, and selling them that way. But the average everyday person out there wants to buy a house that's in good shape, and they have choices today. And so as a result of that, they definitely are going in with that point of view that that's what they want. Now, when it comes down to it, painting is not that much that you have to do in order to, it doesn't cost that much money to do it. And it's something that you can do yourself. You can hire a professional, obviously, to do it. And there are some advantages of doing that they can save you time and deliver lasting results, especially when it comes to the outside. So just using a professional painter, they can reduce the project timeline. They have a skill set and experience to complete a project in a timely manner. And that means it's going to be streamlined from preparation to cleanup. They're going to take care of all of the small details that it's going to be nearly flawless, especially after homeowners exercise their due diligence and vet painters carefully to make sure that they've got the right one. It's going to be obviously less work. Painting can be a time-consuming job, and most of it occurs even before you pick up a brush. It can take hours to prepare the walls, patch holes, remove moldings, and apply painter's tape. And homeowners do not have much time or better off using a professional potentially for that. And then when it comes to preparing, you might have to buy some new tools before beginning the job. That means brushes, rollers, tape, tarps, trays, and much more. And then professional painters understand which projects will produce the desired results depending on the wear and tear of the space. All paints are not created equal, and certain walls, floors, and trim may require unique priming and preparation that novices are not familiar with. And so that might be the reason that you use a professional painter. And just from my own experience, just on the outside of my home, when I purchased it, it was only a few years old. And then within probably 3 or 4 years, the paint that the builder had used was, kind of chalky. And what had been told to me before is that if you can touch the stucco or whatever, which is what my house is made out of, and it comes off chalky, then that means it's time for new paint. And so, like I said, it was only a few years into owning my home that it was kind of chalky. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that means it's time to do it. And so I did have a professional, paint the outside. And when I talked to them, they said, you really want to use good paint. And so they had suggested a specific brand and a specific kind. And, it was on sale. The paint was on sale. They have a sale a couple times a year, and it was 20 or 30% off, but it was still really expensive. And they had me buy the paint, and then they did the, they did the work. And so it was 2 separate bills. But, I think it's 12 years later now, and that paint looks like it's brand new. The builder grade that they had put on, like I said, 4 or 5 years into after the house had been built, the paint was already just getting a little chalky and that kind of stuff. But my house today looks like it was just painted yesterday, and it's been 12 years. So using good paint really matters. And when you're doing the inside of the house, a lot of times the builders, when they're doing it, they're doing the flat paint, and that obviously doesn't last as long as like an eggshell is what a lot of people like to use. So it's not real shiny, but it does clean up really nice. And so, there's all of those kinds of things that you want to look at and consider when it comes to doing the paint on your particular home. But when it comes to selling it, a fresh paint job just makes all the difference in the world. I was talking earlier in the show how I had been meeting with a couple last week that live in Virginia, and they're looking at selling their condo here, and it had just been repainted, and it looks absolutely fabulous. It's in a neutral color, and no marks on the wall or anything like that, and that's definitely going to bring in a better dollar than when it was originally painted. It's the same color. It's a very neutral color than it was originally that the property was done in 2004. But just that fresh coat of paint does all the difference in the world. And so, when people are coming in, they do a really good job. I've got another client that I work with, and he is awesome. And he is also very particular in regards to the quality of what goes on and who paints and all of that kind of stuff in his properties. And when we go look at property, he notices things that I don't even notice half of the time, when it comes to the quality of the paint job. And that's because he's done a lot of it himself. He doesn't do that for a living. He, does other things, but he does like to get involved in construction projects and that kind of thing. And, it's like a lot of the walls and everything down here are not smooth walls like they are up north or like they are in the UK and that kind of thing. And so people look at it and they think it's lower quality, and it possibly is. You have either the orange peel, might be the kind of finish that's on the walls, and that's very forgiving for a painter and everything. But it is possible to miss spots when you've got some of those finishes and that kind of thing on there. But basically, going back to what the top choice for living rooms this year in 2025 is a soft, warm white. And that's 85% of the people like that color. So I think that's obviously a good choice. If you come to grayish, which is a combination of gray and beige, that's 28%. Beige itself is 24%. Taupe is 18%. Blush and earthy tones are 12%, soft greens are 10%, and browns are 6%. So obviously, if you have a choice, soft or warm whites are 85% of what people are looking for. When it comes to the bedrooms, warm neutrals is what people are looking for there. 76% of the people like the warm neutrals. Soft or warm whites are 42% in the bedrooms. So warm neutrals is what they're looking for. Earthy greens are 25%. Cool blues are 18%. Blush tones are 10%. Taupe are 10%. And beige is 8%. So, knowing what you're doing obviously makes a big difference. Now, the top home exterior siding choice or paint choice is off-white, which is 45%. Natural wood is 36%, dark gray 24%, natural stone is 18%, taupe is 18%, light gray is 15%, black is 13%, and navy blue is 13%. So the only thing that I have noticed on an off-white house, and it depends obviously on the time of year, but obviously I'm looking at houses, all year long, is that when the love bugs come out, they are attracted to white. And so, you see a lot more love bugs around those white houses than you do some of the other ones, but they are very pretty and everything. And that's what people are looking for. So that's the only cautionary thing that I have when it comes to Central Florida is if it's love bug season, you might have a little bit more to clean up. if you've got a white house than if you've got another color house. But in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and I will see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I thought, we were talking about paint in the last segment. So really something that kind of goes along with that in our area anyway, especially if you're doing the outside, is the HOAs, the homeowners associations. And in the country, there's 75.5 million Americans that live in communities governed by homeowners associations. Now, in Central Florida, I'm going to say it's about 90% of the people, and I would have to double check that, but if I could probably do a quick search on the MLS in regards to properties that have homeowners associations and ones that don't, and it's probably more like 95, 97% of the ones do. What happened in Central Florida is that we're relatively new in regards to our area and stuff like that. So the areas that don't have homeowners associations many times are the things that the older properties that have existed in the 80s when a lot of homeowners associations were started. They were optional. And so there's some of those, but then pretty much anything that was built 1990 or later in our area is in a homeowners association, unless someone did a custom home or they did a tear down of another property that might be in an established community, maybe like Winter Park or downtown Orlando or Windermere or, Sanford or any of those places that are around here, Kissimmee, that basically existed before the urban sprawl or whatever that happened in Central Florida. So when you're looking at what an HOA has and what they do and all of that kind of good stuff, if you are going to paint the outside of your house, chances are that you are going to have that reviewed by the homeowners association. And it's a pretty easy process for most homeowners associations. They just ask you, like what your address is, what color you want to do it. Sometimes they want to see a paint sample. Sometimes today they might say that they want a specific brand. Sometimes they want a specific colors that they want in the neighborhood. And, if you've been to a new building, new construction, and they're choosing the color of your paint, they want to make sure that everybody in the neighborhood doesn't have the exact same color. So if somebody next to you has that color, they don't allow you to do that exact same thing. So, the homeowners associations aren't necessarily too much different, and they want to make sure that, that it kind of goes with the neighborhood, that it's not going to cause any confusion or anything or damage property values. So, there's a commercial out on a cell phone company now that they're painting everything orange, including houses and stuff like that. And in most homeowners associations, you're not going to be able to do that. But in some homeowners associations, it might be the norm. For example, in like maybe Margaritaville, when you go in there, everything is very colorful and bright, and you've got a pink and a yellow and a blue and a green. I haven't seen orange, but basically all of those bright colors are right there because that's the look and feel of the neighborhood. And so that might not be in the neighborhood where a lot of people live, but in that vacation community of Margaritaville, that's pretty much the kind of look and feel that people want. So to keep it consistent, they regulate what the colors are of the property. You can change it, but you just have to change it within the theme of what they're asking you to do. So the HOA covenants are the rules and expectations for living in the community governed by the homeowners association, and it may prevent residents from painting their house exterior certain colors, or it might require residents to pay a certain fee. Rules may differ from one community to the next, but they usually exist to protect property values and facilitate a good standard of living in the community. The covenants have three types of governing documents. There are the covenants, the conditions and restrictions, and bylaws the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which are the CC&Rs, the bylaws, and the rules and regulations. So the covenants, conditions, and restrictions are officially recorded and filed with the state. They cover the rights and obligations of both the homeowners association and the community residents. They may cover property use restrictions, maintenance obligations, rule enforcement mechanisms, dispute resolution, and insurance obligations. And then the bylaws are typically cover the day-to-day governance aspects of the HOA. This includes the board election process, frequency of elections, number of board members, length of service terms, and the responsibility of the board members. And then there are the rules and regulations. So the rules and regulations are a less permanent extension of the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. They often include rules that must be updated seasonally based on changing needs, and all of these can be amended provided the board and members are largely in agreement, and the homeowners association may choose to update their covenants every few years. And why are they important? It's because they can substantially impact the lives of community residents. They offer amenities and benefits, but the advantages may come at the cost of personal choice and individually. So again, like we're talking about the paint colors and presentation, you might have the fees and amenities, and then the quality of life that might contribute to that. And one of the things that, for example, I know that I have someone that I know that bought a property that, you could park in the garage and you could park in the driveway, but you couldn't park on the apron of the driveway. So if the cars were going, in the order, like they were going into the garage or backing into the garage, they were fine, but you couldn't put a car perpendicular there. And if you did, they would tow. Now, the family in question had teenagers, and as a result of that, they were getting more and more cars in their household. And as a result of that, it was a big problem because they didn't have room to park their car and all of their cars. And so as a result of that, they ended up selling that property and moving somewhere else and stuff like that. So you really want to make sure that if you do have some questions, that you definitely check it out. I mean, a lot of times people kind of just surfacely look at it, but it is worth a gander to go through it and see what's done and what's enforced and all of that kind of good stuff. There are rules and regulations. I was in a vacation home community last week, and they were talking, there was a sign on the door that said that there is a covenant that says that between 10 o'clock at night and 6:30 or 7 in the morning, I don't remember which one, that the decibel level of the music can only be X decimals, whatever it was. And so basically, if you're having a party, you've got to shut it down by 10 o'clock, and that kind of thing, which really isn't a problem, for that neighborhood, but you've got to know, what the regulations are. And so this vacation rental, had the sign on the front door, so everybody knew every time they went in and out that you couldn't be playing music late at night, and that kind of thing. So it's just kind of, many times they're common sense, but maybe there's something that you don't want to adhere to. And so, and then it had, if you do have a problem, this is what you should do to resolve it and all that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that when you are going into a community that it's not going to be something that's going to limit your lifestyle in a way that you don't want to be limited. And I think that that's why a lot of people say, I don't want a homeowners association. But when you start looking in Central Florida, you're like, well, the house I want is in a homeowners association. So how can you do it? So common features in the covenants, conditions, and restrictions are the maintenance standards, that they might be that no piles of trash, no broken or damaged fencing, no unsightly sheds, that may have prohibit pets at above a certain weight, livestock such as chickens. I've seen that definitely, that people can't have those, and might be restrictions on certain dog breeds or something like that. Parking and guests, they may not allow parking in the street or oversized guest vehicles like RVs in the driveway. They also may restrict house parties, large celebrations, or get-togethers on your property. I think that for the most part, it's at a certain time. that happens. And then landscaping rules, they may prohibit flower beds or herb gardens in the front yard, and they may not be allowed to hardscape elements like fountains or tree houses or swings or something. Might be something that you want to check out and all of that. So you definitely just want to make sure that you're going into a home in a homeowners association where eyes wide open is basically what the bottom line is. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we will see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.